Talking Art. Hello and welcome to Talking Art. This is the very first episode. I'm so excited that this is finally reaching you and that you're listening. And this episode really is a special one for me. It really feels like the perfect place to begin. It features an incredible woman called Collier, who I grew up with. She was a really good friend of my parents, and her son and I grew up together. So many of my childhood memories feature her and her family, and she was really my introduction to art. So it feels like an absolutely perfect place to begin. She's a 5 rhythms teacher, she is a painter, she is human, she is gritty, she is raw, she is everything that I love in this world. And she really is where my story begins in so many ways, especially when it comes to art. So here we are talking art, and I hope that you enjoy.
So yeah, I use that metaphor. I have used that metaphor a lot, particularly when I've worked with children. And yeah, the whole thing, a cake doesn't look like a cake when you're just putting the ingredients in the bowl. Like, give it some time. But that said, who doesn't like putting a hand in the bowl and eating the fucking mixture?
So true. See, I had it with acorns and oak trees. I was walking through Devon, and there's these huge oaks, like by Dartington. And it was the time of year where all of the acorns had fallen to the ground. Yeah. And I just kept picking them up and just looking at them. And then I had a moment, I really had a moment of looking at this acorn and then looking up at the tree.
Yeah.
Being
makes no sense.
That's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
it's all in there. It's there it is. There's a tree in there. There's the ingredients for the tree. It's all in there.
And then you must have experienced that in such a beautiful way, seeing me and Alice and Ollie and Rowan and Jackie all grow up.
Yeah, little egg.
The adults and that kid, and the kids and the adult.
And you must see that in us too. I'm sure you don't just see us as the olds. You see the youth in us and the elder in us, and then the soup of, we're sort of witnessing each other's soup all the time, aren't we?
And I think that's such a...
I use the soup metaphor a lot especially when I'm teaching movement. I talk about how we initially when we begin, we're gathering the ingredients, what's going on here, feeling into it. And then we're okay, we sort of finding the kind of expression of that moment, the true expression. And then we're that's ours, chopping up of the ingredients, adding a little bit of, and then we're putting it onto the boil.
Yes.
And then we're letting it cool, adding some seasoning, a little bit of, and then it's the cooling down, the tasting, the sharing. Your soup. Oh yeah, all these metaphors, which is why none of this stuff that we do would have an enduring interest in my understanding. None of it would have retained its interest for me if it wasn't applicable, if it wasn't transferable to how we do things on the day to day.
Yeah.
If it was just about dancing or painting a picture, I'd be way bored by now. I mean, you have to just do a dance and do a picture. We're like, oh, it's the everything. It's the fucking everything.
Yes.
And then what I'm really doing, so I'm just going to totally
go on.
Yeah.
Please do. It's perfect.
What I really love is when we find ways of describing this and being able to articulate it with language as well, so that we can talk about it and share it.
Yeah.
And I'm loving seeing that rising in you and finding ways to bring it alive through language. But I think we have to be careful. I have to be careful to then not lose people by making it all sound a bit like inaccessible because I'm using inaccessible language. This is where I'm at the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you know how it is. You know how it is, Yana. Like beginning to talk, and then like you start talking, and it all just kind of goes like that, and it's all just like lines, and all kind of goes in different directions.
But that's a language that I grew up with. Your paintings.
Yeah.
Like I grew up having it spoken to me, and then like learning to speak it in my own way, in my own accent, in my own like.
It's so hilarious. I find it so hilarious. I mean, in the nicest, not like laughing like ah ha ha, but like.
Even though it is that, Liz, as well at the same time. So ha ha ha! Look at you.
Oh, this is hilarious, Yana.
It's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Oh my God.
And Liz, one gift that I have to thank you for. I mean, there's many, many, many gifts. There's many gifts that you've given me throughout my entire life. But one that stands so firm in my understanding of who I am is that you have always called me your friend.
Ah.
When I was 5 years old, if an adult came along, you wouldn't say, oh, this is Fifth and Sabina's daughter. You'd say, this is my friend. And you describe me as your friend first. And when I was in my teens, you wouldn't say, oh, this is Ollie's friend. You'd introduce people, like, you'd introduce me to people as your friend. And I think what that kid... Go on.
I didn't know I did that. I didn't know that.
You always introduced me as your friend. And so you got to be my friend. Not my parents' friend, but my friend. And so I got to journey myself in relation to you as though... As though we're connected. Not connected through my parents. There's no middle parent humans. There's no adults that allow the conversation to happen. It's like me and you directly. And so when I see your work, it's not, oh, that's my parents' friend's work. That's my friend's work, because I in turn got to make you my friend. And that's been such a blessing for me in coming to know life in the way that you share it. It's not like Liz up there. It's like Soupy Liz and all of her, and Soupy Yana. Like
Soupy heroes.
And I think that all of, everyone growing up, did that to some degree, but you especially. And that means a lot. It means a lot. So thank you.
Thanks, Yana. Thanks. I receive that. I take that. Thanks for your witnessing and your experiencing of that. Because I guess when we were meeting, I would have been like 22, 23 when we first met, when you were little. Which is like, that's really young. Like, I mean, you're way past that now. You're like heading to the old now, girl. Oh, fucking hell. This is hilarious. This is good.
It's so good.
Yeah, so there was a summer, there was one summer where me and Jo Drew, Jo Drew, who does, she's a movement therapist, she does wild goddess workshops, she's a dance movement therapist. We'd danced a lot together, like going out to gigs and stuff, and we knew that when we danced, something went on that was not just about like, let's go to a gig. It was like having conversations. And then the one time I knew that something else was going on, like really, we were out at a gig, some didgeridoo thing, and we were there, we were dancing, and she turned to me and she said, Liz, could you just witness my dance for a minute? And this is like the first time I'd ever heard this kind of language, and I didn't bat an eyelid. I just went, yeah, sure. And she was dancing, and I turned to her afterwards, and I just suddenly started telling her all this stuff that I was witnessing in her dance. And then the gig carried on, blah, blah, blah. And then a short while after that, she showed me an article that was in a magazine that they used to sell in First Season. You remember the health food shop?
Yeah.
Where I worked, yeah, for a wee while.
Yeah, I do remember. Dad used to talk in there for ages.
Yeah, but you all got Colts for Rock. That's why you
were Colts Foot Rock and mushroom pate and rice cakes. And Purdy's. Purdy's too. Yeah. We weren't allowed fizzy drinks, so Purdy's was like the treat.
The amount of, oh my goodness. I'll have to do like 3 Zooms for this. At least this is a 3 Zoom situation.
Yeah.
To re-meet. There's this magazine called Kindred Spirit, which was actually published down in Dartington, actually, in Devon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there was a couple at the time who had brought Gabrielle Roth's work to the UK, a couple called Yakov and Susanna, who went on to develop their own work that had rooted in Five Rhythms work, and then they went on to develop something called movement medicine. It's all the same thing. Different type of same thing, different language, whatever, but same thing. So Jo showed me this article. She's like, have you seen this? And there's these photos of this couple, like in unitards, like doing all their dancing with their shamanic drum and all like... And looking at him like, yeah, that looks legit to me, making sense. Yeah. I'm gonna like, okay. And then that summer, your folks said to me, we're doing a bit of a tour in the van, and where we need someone to watch the kids while we go and take jewellery samples to different shops. We're trying to kind of open the business out. And they asked me if I would come with Ollie to hang out with you and Felix would be with your mum and dad, and Mia and Ollie would just go and like, I don't know, would make something up for the time while they were like doing business. And I was like, yeah, sure. So we did a tour of the UK and of Scotland. I don't know if you remember any of this.
I have a memory of us in the front seats of the van and a story being read. There was a story time, a story being read or a story being made up in the front of the van, which I imagine happened several times.
Yeah.
But I have a memory of being in the front of that van and a story being read and you being there.
Well, we did a big tour. We did it in two parts. We did the UK, sort of southerly. We went down to Devon, Bristol, Bath. Did some places in the north, some parts of the north of the UK, and then we went up to Scotland as well. But what happened was that because we went to a lot of vegetarian restaurants, we went to a lot of whole food stores for picking up snacks and stuff, I kept on seeing posters for Five Rhythms Dance. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit like everywhere I went, I was like, this thing is like following me. You know, this, I'm like a bit like, what? You know, like, what is it? And then we went up to Scotland and we went to Findhorn. And I picked up one of Gabrielle's books. Her first book she wrote, Sweat Your Prayers. And one of her tapes, so it was on cassette. And that was when I first started like actively working with her teachings. So that was like 1996. And then I sort of, as you know, I studied and danced and did stuff and developed stuff myself, but it was only 2 years ago that I actually completed the official teacher training program because I was ready. Prior to that, like, prior to that, I was just really happy to be the eternal student, you know, and that will always continue. I feel that to be a student is a very important thing that keeps me in the circle rather than putting me into a place of elevation, if you see what I mean. We all learn from each other, huh? We know this.
Yeah.
But I realised that as time went on, as decades passed, it was very important for me to go and pay my dues to the woman who had activated and crystallized and helped me find language and form and space. And it's really amazing how, like, I feel like I'm at the beginning of another new era. And may there always be new eras for all of us.
I remember coming to visit you in Whitby.
Yeah.
And you being like, I'm doing it. I'm signing up for the teacher training. And I was like, yes, you are. And we like sat down at the door. We sat down like in the hallway for a moment. And we were like giggling in the hallway, being like, yes, you're doing it. And there was such celebration. And I felt the momentum of that as someone who had grown up with, you know, my mama going to Liz's dance each weekend and having danced with you, and like so much of what I do and what I offer to the world is rooted in seeds that you planted.
I see it, love. I see it. It's like we don't all have to do everything.
Yeah.
There are some things that like we're doing this for each other anyway. It's not like about me, it's not about you, it's about the whole, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that that's like I'm really aware as an artist and somebody who loves language and beauty, that sometimes it can all sound, I hear myself and I'm like, God, you're making it sound like it's really easy and all lovely, and it fucking isn't, is it?
No.
We know this.
No.
We know that we know that we're bringing light into the areas where there previously hasn't been either permission to speak or articulate it in a verbal or a non-verbal way. So we're offering roots through, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're like throwing each other a line.
Yeah.
Whether that be a line of poetry or a physical line of a limb, or like a thread of connection. That's why so much of it kind of makes sense to so many, because it's inherent language that just lives in us. And if we can't find a way of describing it, then an essence of it will touch somebody else and they'll find language that will then transform, and it will mean something. It cascades through us. We're just a conduit for connection. That is it.
And it's not always immediate as well. I think that's one of the things that I'm really coming to learn. And, growing up and seeing like, wow, even just a memory of like, oh, we were at Music Pot and me and the kids were running through the hallways and Liz's artwork was there hanging on the walls. It's like memory, details, Liz. Or like, and it's like, it feels like it's a line into what then becomes and the way that we play with time. And it's like, I go back into my childhood and then you're there back then reaching to me now. And that allows for this connection to happen. And it's this playing and these lines that reach through time as well. It's like 23-year-old Liz is reaching to me right now, being like, here's an offering. And I'm reaching through to, my younger self. And I love how we can never really know the ripple. Yes! You see?
I found this the other day. In recent months, I did this big show, which was like a retrospective of looking back over sort of 30 years of making. And I found this quote. I found this quote. It makes sense. It makes sense. Some stuff, it didn't make sense maybe when I wrote it, but then I found it the other day and I was like, thanks, previous me.
You see? And then I'm like, oh, thanks, previous you, for writing that and bringing in a little synchronicity there. And like, it's so good. I love you.
I love you massive. Fucking brilliant to see you.
So good to see you and to talk and to just dive right in.
I know, like we don't waste any time, do we? Like,
there's no like, hi, so how are you doing? It's like, I like the earrings, acorns and oak trees. Oh yeah, cake. Yes, can I record this? Because this is it already. Like, we don't need any. Hi, so.
Yeah. So well,
I love that.
What's the situation where you are then, love? Are you
South Africa?
How's the lockdown situation?
Lockdowns. I'm a bit of a creature of home anyway. I have a tendency to find my little corner and nest in it. So it doesn't. So I've not been finding it too intense, just because I generally like to coop up anyway. But we recently shifted from level 5 to level 4, and so we can go for jogs within certain times of day within a 5-kilometer radius of our home. Yenis just went to work, actually. He got a permit from whoever he's doing the work for, so he's just gone out to work for the first time. I think they're gauging things. And Joburg especially is like, there's so many different pockets of reality that like what it's like for me here is probably completely different to what it's like for someone just like 10 or 20 miles away.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so pretty strict lockdown. I've personally been finding it fine because I kind of tend to live this way anyway. I've been super creative, just like creating, doing things, ideas. Oh, we should do this, we should do that, like all kinds of stuff, feeling really alive on a personal level. Yeah, really like just good in life. And I can feel how everything that I went through recently with all the detention center stuff was just a huge initiation into choosing South Africa as home. It's like, this is where I choose, this is home. I want my nest now. I want to land myself somewhere and put my roots in and like grow with that. And so it's felt really good just feeling that like, this really is home. Because in the past it was like, yeah, it's home, but it's coming. And now it's like, this is home. There's no question about it. Like that. And yeah, I could feel so that my time in detention was 6 and a bit days, and it felt like it was 6 and a bit days for the 6 and a bit years of my journey here.
Interesting. Yeah. A year in a day. I like it. Yeah. That's the time stretch thing again, isn't it? Like those we can have these like massive moments and then these micro moments.
Yeah.
Micro moments where massive things happen, and then these massive stretches of time where nothing can change at all.
Yeah.
And I like that the elasticity of time.
I love that word. Elasticity in relation to time.
Yeah. Yeah. Resistance bands.
Yeah. Cosmic ones.
Yeah. One of my teachers, she does a workshop called Time Travel, and we work a lot with past and future, and integration and ancestral stuff, future selves. I think there is a blessing that the skills that we have honed, worked with, as because a lot of artists do have a very private sort of cocoon-like experience of the world anyway. I'm conscious now that here there is quite a lot of chaos in terms of what the government is. It feels like the government's actually sort of sacrificing people right now by giving them really unclear guidelines and really not taking care of medical staff, and there not being enough protective equipment for people working within the health system. And what had been initially a slow steps towards like a lockdown so that there wasn't a spread of infection has then led to people being kind of a little bit not really taking the virus as a contagion seriously. And the government has just released some very ambiguous guidelines, which basically are going to kind of keep people in a very high level of risk. So for someone like me, who can work from home, who lives in a beautiful wide open moorland, who can get out and cycle and walk for miles without seeing many people, there's been something about the peace of this time that's been really lovely. In the wider scheme of things, for people who are really like not in the same privileged position, this lack of care coming from the government is damaging to the individual. And it's worrying, Yana. So yeah, well, this is what we've all kind of woken up to today. There was a speech on the news yesterday, from a very incoherent speech from the government, and there's a lack of clarity in leadership, which then makes me return once more to like the clarity of my own self-governance. What feels right for me? What feels right for me and my beloveds, to keep this beloved and the beloveds near me, and how does that then serve the wider world? We don't have to take that on. We don't have to take what we perceive as bullshit on. We look for new routes through to serve ourselves and each other.
And I think in many ways that is the role of the artist, or a role of the artist, you know, finding those new pathways, finding the new languages, finding the new ways that we can see and have life reflected back to us. It's like we create this, don't we?
Yeah. And it's no different to how, it's like we're just recycling old information, you know, like when we look to any society that had a sense of taking care of earth, self, family, other, we see that there's something about this time that gives those of us that who are inclined to working in a more kind of community way, it's almost like a validation that these ways are really self-supporting and nurturing. And so I think we can take some sort of sense of reassurance or validation to continue doing the work that we do. And I feel like it's really supporting something quiet in me. I've always felt at odds with the wider world, Yana. The little Liz that watched the world, and you know, having had a very different upbringing to your experience, Ol and Alice and you, like watching the different ways that you were raised. I remember witnessing my parents having to go out to work a lot of it being centered around, you know, like work and the economy, and people finding ways to value themselves through status and economics. And I remember just not getting that as a child, and as I was growing, just like looking at it all and just kind of just thinking, oh no, I don't get that, why you would have to do it like that, and why. And I looked out and started observing other people doing things in different ways, and I came into my roots through were different, but they're the same thing, because my mum used to say, before you go out and change the world, you've got to take care of what's on your doorstep. And there was something about old medicine coming down through her, even though she would be what I would describe as like working class, kind of quite straight edge with her thinking, but yet still there's all this kind of medicine coming through from church, from her big family that she was raised within. So everything comes full circle. And yet again, you know, we come back to this thing of like, we are just conduits for like wit and wisdom, you know.
Yeah.
We're just passing stuff on, aren't we?
Yeah.